The reason your manifestation is not working is not because the universe forgot about you. It's not because you did the wrong technique, and it's not because you didn't visualize hard enough. The real reason is much more uncomfortable. You keep visiting the version of yourself who has the money, who has the success, the freedom, the peace, and the confidence. But then you keep going back to that old character. You meditate as the wealthy person. You affirm as the successful version. You journal as the chosen version. But then the moment you check your bank account or get a bill or you see somebody else winning or you feel a little bit of pressure from your current life, you go right back to that old identity, to the person who doesn't have it. And that's why you feel stuck. But in this video, I'm going to share with you, you're not actually stuck. You're just loyal to an old role. And today I want to show you how to retire from that old role, because the version of you who's rich, successful, peaceful, respected, and free is not something that you're waiting to become. It's a state that you must occupy right now. And Neville Goddard said, assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled. But most people think that means to feel good for 5 minutes and then go back to being afraid all day. That's not assumption, that's just visiting. And there's a big difference between visiting the new identity and living from it. So today I want to break down why you're not stuck, why the old version of you keeps recreating the same financial reality, and how to start playing the version of yourself who already has what you want. Because your reality is not responding to what you want. It's responding to who you keep being. Now, most people say, I'm trying to manifest money. But that mindset right there is a huge problem, because the version of you who is trying to manifest money is usually the version of you who believes that money is missing. That version of you is always checking. They're always worried. That version always asks, where is it? They're always keeping score. But the version of you who already has the money doesn't think like that. They don't beg reality for proof. They're not panicking every time their world isn't reflecting their inner world. They don't treat every delay as a rejection because they move differently. They speak differently. They make different decisions. And they have a different relationship with money. They have a different relationships with themselves. And they have a different relationship with time. And that's where most people miss it, because they're trying to manifest a new life while remaining emotionally loyal to the old one. They want the wealth, but then they still identify as somebody who struggles. They want success, and then they still identify as somebody who's behind. They want abundance, and then they still identify as somebody who never has enough. So the question isn't, how do I get more money? The better question is, who am I being right now? Because money doesn't respond to your desire. It responds to your self-concept. Because if deep down you see yourself as somebody who's always trying to catch up, they're always sacrificing, always almost there, hoping something finally works out, then even when an opportunity does appear, you're going to interact with that from the old identity. You're going to self-sabotage. You're going to delay it. You're going to doubt it. You're going to overthink it. You're going to reject it. Or you're going to fail to recognize it altogether. And it's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're unlucky. It's just because the old version of you doesn't know how to receive the new life. So that's why the new identity has to shift first. Your identity is the container. If the container's small, the life you want can't stay there. You may get a burst of money. You might get a windfall. You might get a new opportunity, or you might get a breakthrough. But if your identity hasn't changed, then eventually you're going to go back to what feels normal. And that word right there is important, normal, because your life isn't built around what you want. It's built around what feels normal to you. If stress feels normal, peace feels suspicious. If struggle feels normal, then ease feels fake. If not having enough feels normal, then receiving may actually feel uncomfortable. And that's why so many people say they want more money, but then when they get close to the contract or they get close to something, they get scared. They feel guilty. They feel unworthy. They question it. And then they say, well, this is too good to be true. And then they call that intuition. But sometimes it's not intuition. Sometimes it's just the old identity panicking because the new identity is just too real to them. And this is the part that nobody wants to talk about. Your old self is not a set of circumstances. The old self is a pattern of emotional habits. The old version of you has a familiar way of reacting to money, a familiar way of reacting to bills, to opportunities, of reacting to silence, a familiar way of reacting when things may not happen right away. And every time you react that old way, you're just confirming the old identity. So for example, when you check your bank account and then you immediately feel fear, that's not a reaction, that's just rehearsal. So you're rehearsing the identity of you who doesn't feel safe with money. When you see somebody else succeeding and you feel behind, that's also rehearsal. You're rehearsing the identity of somebody who believes that success is scarce. When an opportunity comes and you say, well, I don't know if I'm ready for that, that's also rehearsal. You're rehearsing the identity of somebody who needs permission. When you say, I'm just trying, I hope, maybe one day, all this, that's all rehearsal. You're rehearsing from distance of the wish fulfilled. That's why Neville Goddard's teaching was so powerful. He didn't say beg. He didn't say to force it. He didn't say to obsess over it. He said to assume. Assumption means to occupy the state internally before the outer world confirms it externally. That means the new version of you has to become emotionally present, emotionally at home before your physical world can experience that. So you have to ask, how would I react if it was already done? How would I speak if I knew that the money is already here? How would I carry myself if I knew that I was chosen for success? How would I treat my current life if I knew that this is just temporary? And this doesn't mean to ignore reality. It just means that you stop worshiping it. And there's a huge difference because you can see your current bank account without making that your identity. You can pay your bills without living in fear. You might have a slow season without deciding that this is failure. And you can be in the middle and still belong to the end. And there's a huge difference between the old self and the new self. The old you looks at the current scene and says, this is who I am. The new you says, this is just evidence. That's old evidence. And that's a powerful distinction because your current life isn't always showing you what's coming. Sometimes it's showing you what you used to assume. Your current circumstances may be receipts from your old identity. So why would you use old receipts to decide your future? That's just like looking at your old bank statements and saying, this is all I can ever have. But that was a former state. That was a former assumption. That was a former version of you. The moment you understand that, you stop taking your current reality so personal. You stop saying, why is this happening to me? And you start asking, what identity created this? And what identity am I choosing right now? That's power. One of the biggest mistakes that most people make is treating their bank account like it has authority. They look at the number and they let that number tell them who they are. They let it tell them how safe they feel. They let it tell them what's possible. They let it tell them whether their manifestation is working or not. But your bank account is not the cause. It's just feedback. It's just a reflection. It's just, your past assumptions, your past habits, your past identities, past opportunities, your past reactions. It's just data. It's not God. It's not your destiny. It's not your worth. It's not your final answer. When you look at your bank account and immediately collapse emotionally, you're just giving the outer world permission to define your inner state. The law of assumption works the other way around. The inner state leads first, then the outer world follows. This is why your relationship with your bank account matters so much, because most people have trauma responses to their money, to their bank account. They avoid looking at it on their phone, and they look and they scroll and they see it and they feel shame, or they feel anger, or they feel embarrassment or fear. And then they wonder why money feels so heavy. So you have to begin to change your relationship. You may not like the number today, but you can stop making that your enemy. You can look at your bank account and say, thank you. Every time you drive by a bank, there's tons of banks I'm sure you drive by all the time. Bless the bank. Thank you for being here. Thank you for circulating. Thank you for showing me where I am. Thank you, but I don't take my identity from you. That might sound simple, but this changes the emotional pattern, the emotional response that you have. Because wealth consciousness is not pretending while you have money while secretly panicking. Wealth consciousness is deciding that no matter what the number is, you have a different identity. And that's the work. You're not forcing yourself to feel fake rich. You're not lying to yourself. You're just no longer bowing down to the temporary scene. The wealthy version of you doesn't make the bank account their master. The wealthy version of you makes the bank account a tool. And that's a completely different relationship. And when you shift that relationship, your actions shift as well. You stop avoiding, you start organizing, you start noticing opportunities, you start making clear decisions. You're not making any desperate choices. You're not chasing anything from fear. You start moving from assumption, and that's how your inner world reorganizes, and then your outer world reflects from that. If you've been feeling stuck financially, like no matter what you do, you keep circling back to the same level. It's not random, that's a pattern. And the craziest part about that is that most people will never question it. They just learn to live with it because they've been programmed to think small, to expect less, to settle. And if that doesn't change, nothing else will. And that's exactly why I created something that's gonna help with this. I put together a 6-step wealth manifestation blueprint to help you reprogram the way that you think, feel, and identify so you can actually align with wealth, abundance, love, and freedom. Not someday, but right now. Because if the internal pattern doesn't change, the results won't change. So right now, you're gonna get 2 books, How to Visualize Like a World Champion, King Solomon's Secrets to Wealth. You're gonna get a workbook, audiobook, and daily affirmation cards. Normally this is $165, but right now it's available for only $44. Now, if you feel this, don't ignore it. Check the first link in the description or go to vincentsantiago.com/my-book and be honest with yourself. Are you ready to change the pattern or keep repeating it? Now, here's a truth that may sting because some people say they want a new life, but then they keep defending the old story. They defend why they can't have it. They defend this has to be hard. They defend why money never comes easy. They defend why their family didn't teach them anything, so they don't have any responsibility. But the real question isn't, did this happen? The question is, do I want to keep making this my identity? Because as long as you keep identifying with the story, you keep giving that your creative power. Now, Neville Goddard's work isn't about denying the story ever happened. It's just refusing to let that old story be the author of your next chapter. You can say, well, yeah, that did happen. Yes, I went through that. Yes, that was the old pattern. Yes, I used to think that way. But that's not who I am right now. I'm not the same person. I'm not that anymore. And that last sentence is where the shift happens. I'm not that person anymore. The old version of you needed proof before they believed. Not the new person, not the new version. The old version used to panic over money. I'm not that anymore. The old version of you used to feel behind when they see other people winning. I'm not that person anymore. The old version of you waited for permission. I'm not that person. The old version of you kept calling fear realistic. I'm not that version. Now, once you keep inserting these new ideas in your mind, reality is going to test your new identity. An old delay might happen. And that's the moment that matters the most, because that's where people abandon this new self. They're in the process of installing this new identity, and then they just go right back to that old version. They say, see, this isn't working. And that's just rehearsal. So this is the moment where you either return back to the old identity or you just remain faithful to the new one. And faith isn't proven when everything looks perfect. Faith is proven when the old version of you is creeping up and you just refuse to become connected with that old version again. That's assumption. That's the new identity. That's the work. So the question, where is it, keeps you in lack. Where's the money? Where's the opportunity? Where's the breakthrough? Where's the sign? Where's the result? Every time you ask from desperation, you reinforce separation. You're basically saying, I'm here and I want what's over there. But the law of assumption says you must occupy the end. So the better question is, who am I if it was already done? If the money was already handed to me, right? How would I breathe? If the opportunity was already mine, how would I move today? If success was inevitable, what decision would I make? If I truly believed that I was supported, would I stop being in fear? If I knew that my life was changing, what version of myself would I stop performing? So that's a doorway, because identity is practical. It's not just spiritual. The successful version of you may finally send an email. The wealthy version of you may finally look at the numbers. The confident version of you may finally post the content. And that's why this work matters so much, because identity changes your behavior, and then your behavior changes your results, and results reinforce your identity. But most people are waiting for the results to give them a new identity. That's backwards. You don't wait for the crown to act like royalty. You always assume the crown internally, and then when the world begins to rearrange around that role, you just walk through the doors, you just accept it. Because imagination is not just pictures in your mind, it's the version of you who you are consistent with, who you are being. And that's why you can visualize wealth every night but still reject it every morning. Because if your morning self is anxious, doubtful, reactive, shameful, obsessive, then your visualization is not your identity, it's just entertainment. The goal isn't to just imagine once. The goal is to become the version of you who it feels natural to. Now, naturalness is the secret. When wealth feels natural, you stop chasing. When success feels natural, you stop putting that on a pedestal. When love feels natural, you stop begging for it, you stop chasing. Now, here's what I want you to do. For the next 24 hours, don't try to manifest anything. Don't beg. Don't check every hour. Don't ask for signs. Don't look for proof. For the next 24 hours, only do one thing. Play the version of you who already knows it's already done. Not in a fake way, not in a delusional way. This is from a disciplined way. Now ask yourself before every reaction, how would the wealthy version of you respond to this? How would the successful version speak? How would the version of me trust life in this moment? How would the version of me who knows money is coming treat this bill? How would the version of me who's already successful make this decision? For the next 24 hours, refuse to rehearse from the old character. When you want to complain, just pause. When you want to panic, just chill out, breathe, relax. When you want to say, I can't afford that, just take a step back. When you want to say nothing's working, say, that's the old scene passing. When you want to compare yourself, say, their success is proof that I can also be successful. When you want to check for evidence, say, I am the evidence. And that last one is important. I am the evidence, because the first evidence of manifestation is not always external. The first evidence is always you. You don't chase the same, you don't collapse the same, you don't identify with lack. That's the proof. That's the bridge right there. That's the new reality forming all the way through. Now, the world may still look familiar for the moment. It might look similar. But when you say that you're no longer the same, your world can't remain the same forever. It has to shift. Now, here's the last warning. Your old identity is going to try to negotiate with you. It's going to say, well, what if this may not work? Look at the facts. Who do you think you are? But remember, this happened last time. People like us, we don't get lucky like that. There's an old saying that says, let sleeping dogs lie. And basically what that means is all the negatives in the mind have been there so long, and if you don't bother them, then they're not going to bother you too much. But when you start implanting new ideas in the subconscious mind, basically what that's doing is that's going to stir up the pot, and some old feelings are going to come out. That old version of you is going to try to compete. But as long as you keep supplanting that with new ideas and reinforcing the new program, eventually that's going to crowd out those old ideas and you're going to be left with the new version of you. But don't let it make financial decisions for you. Don't let it choose your dreams. Don't let it defend your worth. The fact that you can imagine a higher version of yourself means that there's already a state available for you to occupy. So the question is, will you keep visiting it, or will you finally move on? Now, how do you retire this old self? Well, you do it in 3 ways. First, you stop repeating the old story. Not out loud, internally. Catch that inner conversation, those mental arguments, the imagined failure, the silent, I knew this was going to happen, the secret expectation of things going wrong. That's where everything is being built from. And secondly, is to change your emotional relationship with money. Stop treating money like it's above you. Stop treating it like it's hard to reach. Stop treating it like it only comes through pain, that you need it. Switch this around. Say, I don't need money, money needs me. Start seeing money as something that can arrive in expected and unexpected ways. Through a job, a business idea, a client, a gift, a settlement, a raise, a refund, an opportunity, connections, property, creative downloads, a simple conversation. Don't limit the channel. When you say it has to come from this way, it has to be this amount, you're blocking the ways that it can come to you. Because the wealthy version of you is open. They're open to all kinds of different opportunities. Now, open also doesn't mean passive. Open just means that you're not arguing with how it comes to you. Now, the third way is to act in the new identity from small decisions. Now, this is where everything becomes real, because the new you doesn't need to make one giant dramatic move. The new you is built with small movements. How you answer the phone, how you speak about your future, how you look at your current circumstances, how you handle pressure, how do you organize your day, how do you treat your body, how you show up when no one's clapping for you, how you respond when the evidence hasn't changed yet. Because every small decision is a vote. The old self or the new self. Is it lack or assumption? Is it fear, identity? Is it your past or is it your future? And eventually those votes add up and you become familiar with that new version or the old version. And that's when everything begins to shift, because now you're not forcing yourself to believe, you are being the version. The money you want requires a version of you that can receive it. The success you want requires a version of you that can hold it. The freedom that you want requires a version of you that no longer identifies with struggle. The peace that you want requires a version of you that no longer lets circumstances control that state. So today, retire the old self. Not someday, not when the money comes, not when everybody understands, not when the bank account changes. Do it now. Because the old version of you can't enter the new life. The new version of you can't keep bowing down to the old life. So for the next 24 hours, live as if this shift has already happened. Walk like it, speak like it, choose like it, react like it. And when the old voice shows up, just remind yourself, that's not me anymore. I don't take instructions from my old self. I'm not waiting to become the person. I am becoming the person. And once you become the person internally, the world has no choice but to catch up.